Howdy folks, and welcome back to another Project Nexus modding tutorial. In this video I'm going to be telling you how to import your very own custom ranged weapon into the game. So without further ado, let's get started. In order to get started, you are obviously going to be needing a 3D model. Does not necessarily have to be a ranged weapon. In fact, the 3D model can be of anything. It could be a shoe, it could be a hat, it could even be a melee weapon, but you can still turn it into a gun in the game. It just needs to be a model. But for our case, I do have a model that I'm going to use. So before we get into Unity stuff, we will need Unity for this. We're going to get into Blender stuff. So let's go ahead and open up Blender. Blender 3.4 is the version that I'm using, but if you're using whatever the latest version of Blender is at the time that you're watching this, I'm pretty sure that would still work. I don't think Blender version overtly matters here. So we wait for Blender to open up, delete the default cube, and now we need to go grab our 3D model. So I have a pistol here that I downloaded. So we're going to copy the address as text. I would definitely recommend putting your model somewhere in your hard drive that's easy for you to find. If you have trouble navigating file systems like this, I would definitely recommend maybe putting those files on your desktop just so you immediately know where they are. Excuse me. But yeah, that would make things a little easier for you to perhaps find your model. But for me, I already know where it is because I already had it open. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of that camera and that light. We don't need those. That will, if we keep that camera and that light in there, that will actually cause complications when we put this model into Unity, so you want to get rid of that. Then you want to click on File, Import. You need to know what file format you're working with. So typically if you're downloading off of Sketchfab like I am, you're going to get OBJ or FBX. Sometimes you get DAE. I've even encountered a couple GLTF or GLB objects on there. And what you're going to want to do if you encounter that, Blender already supports those, so you can import those kinds of models. But when you export, you want it to either be an OBJ or an FBX, because those are the two model types that Unity has the easiest time working with. From what I understand, DAE just straight up does not work for the Unity version we're going to use. We're going to be using Unity Editor 2019. For all you Unity heads out there, you might know what that means. But let's go ahead and import our model. So let's grab it. So this is obviously the 9mm pistol from Half-Life 2. I chose this particular model because it has a quality of it that I quite enjoy. So here's the model in question. It's not terribly impressive looking right now, but what we're going to do is we are going to select all of this model, and we're going to select all of it, and then we are going to right click it, and then we are going to hit Shade Smooth. So what that's going to do is that is going to ensure that when we port this model into the game, the toon lines, which are the sort of black outline that appear around every object in the game, that's going to ensure those are not broken and function correctly in the game. It's a small thing, but it's quite important if you want your mod to look good. Another reason I chose this model is because the slide here on this particular pistol moves, and that's going to be important when we're porting this weapon in. So let's go ahead and move on to Unity. So you're going to need to download the Unity Hub. Go ahead and install that on your computer if you haven't already. And you're going to see a screen that looks like this. Yours is probably not going to have anything in it, and that's fine. That's intentional. You should have also downloaded a Unity project. I think it's just called... Sorry about that, folks. I had myself a small little interruption there. But as I was saying, you are going to need to download, I believe it's called mpn_mod_tools, not mpn nemmod. You want the mod tools. That is what we're going to be using. So we're going to click on this little arrow here, and we're going to hit Add Project from Disk. And I already know where this is, so I'm just going to paste it here. And I've named this tutorial just for the sake of this tutorial. But from what you would have downloaded, this is what it is, you know, mpn_mod tools. That's what you would have ended up extracting just from that zip file you downloaded. So we're just going to add project. Oops, did I mess something up? I probably did. Okay, hold on. Let me rename this one to tutorial and then add that one. There we go. So here it is. It's 2 months old because I think that's when this particular project was created, but we're going to click on that and that is going to open up Unity. Might take a second to load. Depending on how strong your computer is, it might take a little longer to load, but don't fret if it doesn't load immediately. You are basically working with an entire game engine here, so, you know, don't be afraid. Alright. Is it doing that thing again? Oh, Lord. There we go. We need to move that all the way down. Actually, we just need to get rid of that entirely. Alright, we are now here where we need to be. So we have an assets folder. You see down here where it says assets. This is where we're going to be putting our 3D models that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to create a new folder. We are just going to call it tutorial pistol, because that's the tutorial pistol. So we are going to then go and locate where I put that in. So models to be ported. I think, where did I put you? Oh yeah, so, right, I think I forgot to show that after you smooth out the model here in Blender, you want to export it as typically as whatever the original file format was. I don't think it matters a whole lot, but you want to find a place to export it. In my case, I would probably export it here. So, and then you would just name it, we'll just name it tutorial pistol. And now we have what we need. It's the exact same thing as this HL2 pistol here, but just to differentiate, I've named it tutorial pistol. So now what we're going to do is we are going to move that into our Unity project. And as you can see, this pistol is freaking massive. So we don't want that. We want to scale it down. So we'll click on the scale tool here, up here in the top left of the screen, and we will decrease the size of the pistol. I'm probably not going to get the scale 100% correct, and that's fine. For the sake of the tutorial, it doesn't really matter how big the model is, as long as it's something that's easily viewable in the game. So we're going to zoom in on this. So now with tutorial pistol, we're going to click on animation. We are not going to import any animations. That's not what we're doing. Then we're going to go to materials, and we are going to hit extract materials. So it has two things here, two materials. We are going to go up here where it says shader, and where it says standard, we're going to click on that, madness, and we're going to add items weapon to it. And we're going to do that for both materials. Items weapon. And then we're going to go find the textures. They should be somewhere. If you downloaded it off Sketchfab, it should have been in the zip file you downloaded. So we're going to grab the two materials that we need. In our case, shooter pistol magazine color, and then shooter pistol color. So for VR_shooter pistol, we're going to add the texture, and it's looking better already. And for the magazine, we're going to add that texture too. So we are now done texturing this. Now what we want to do is we want to click up here where my mouse is, where it says create. Click on that. Create empty. You now have created an empty game object. You're going to right click it. You're going to hit rename. And in our case, we're going to rename it to R_tutorial pistol. The reason we have R_ there is to help differentiate internally that this is a ranged weapon. So that's what that R stands for. It just stands for ranged. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add component. We're going to click on that, and you're probably going to get like a drop down menu here with a bunch of stuff in it. You're going to search for mad obj, and you're going to click on mad obj underscore ranged. You're going to click on that, and now what you want to do using the Unity editor, if you're wondering how I'm like rotating the camera, I'm holding down right click and moving my mouse kind of in this space. So you want to click on the move tool, and then you want to move this empty game object roughly to the center of where your pistol is. So we're going to zoom in on that. Alright, so that game object is now in a good place where I like it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in, and we are going to see here where it says mad obj underscore range script. We're going to right click on that, and we're going to hit create points. And then that will have created 2 points, grip main and grip off. If we go to r underscore tutorial pistol and we click on this little arrow, it's going to bring down a drop down menu where we can access grip main and grip off. So we're going to put the grip main up here near where the trigger is. This is where the character's primary hand in the game is going to be holding the gun. And grip off, this is where their secondary hand is going to be holding the gun. So if the gun is maybe a larger weapon, it's heavier, and a character cannot hold it with one hand, that's where their other hand would go. Or if they're aiming and they're stabilizing their aim with their other hand, that's where the other hand would go. In the game's case, that would be the character's left hand. So now what we're going to do, now that we have specified our grip points, make sure these grip points are placed correctly. If they're not, your character is going to be holding on to empty space or holding on to the wrong part of the gun. Make sure that they are placed correctly, and keep in mind that the blue arrow decides where the hand actually is. So sort of imagine a hand kind of wrapped around this gun. The blue arrow is facing the same way as the gun, which is good. That's what we want. So now what we're going to do is we are going to scroll down on the bottom left where it says prefabs. We're going to click on that. We are going to grab r underscore tutorial pistol, and we are going to drag it down into prefabs. Oops, I skipped a step, and I'll show you what I did. I forgot to put the pistol inside r underscore tutorial pistol. I do that all the time. Now that it's in there, we just dragged and dropped it into the game object. Now we're going to drag it down, and as you can see, the model is now here. Very good. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go to the top right where it says open prefab. Click on it. So we are now in the prefab menu. Now don't get scared when you see this. If you want to get out of here, you just click on this little arrow up here under the create button. Click on that and it'll take you right out of it, but we want to be in the prefab editor. So in the prefab editor, we click on create again and we create an empty game object, and we're going to copy and paste that 6 times. We want 7 of these, and we are going to rename them to slide, shoot, reload, mag, casing, stock, and rip. Actually, we need one more. I'll show you what this one more is in a second. So we're going to click on tutorial pistol again, r underscore tutorial pistol, and you will see down here over to the right, you'll see breach object, point shoot, point mag, all these game objects we made. Actually, slide doesn't need to go in there just yet. I'll show you why, but for now we'll just put it in there. Shoot, reload, mag, casing, stock, rail. So you might be asking, why did we just do any of that? These game objects are telling the game, when we port this model into the game, if you want attachments on your gun like stocks, muzzle adapters, silencers, sights, magazines, you are now telling the game where these need to go. So if I were to say grab the shoot point, so this is going to tell the game where the bullet comes out of. So we're going to want to move this up to the front of the gun and make sure it is positioned perfectly. It doesn't have to be overly perfect, but generally in the barrel of the gun. So the bullet will then come out of there, and that blue arrow is deciding where that bullet needs to go. So reload doesn't really matter. You can leave that around here. Generally, you would put this when the character plays the reload animation in the game. This is just kind of where their hand is going to go. So you probably just want to put it somewhere around where the magazine is. Mag. So in this case, I believe that magazine is... This is where, if this is a weapon that is going to use vanilla game magazines, like the Glock magazine or the AR-15 magazine, this is where you would specify where that needs to go. So if this is a weapon that you want people to be able to put attachments on, this is where they would put their magazine attachment. And I think the blue arrow facing downward, if we use the rotate tool here, decides where the magazine goes. It might take a little bit of trial and error, because I haven't really messed around with magazines too much, but that's generally the rough idea that I have of it. So I think it would look something like this if you were to specify a magazine in a weapon like this. I know this weapon in particular does have a magazine model, but we're not going to be putting that to use. It's just going to stay in the gun. Casing. This is where the shell casings, when the gun is fired, are going to come out. The blue arrow decides where those casings are going. So in our case, if we were to fire the gun in the game, the shell casing would come out of the grip in a forward motion, which doesn't make any sense. So what we would do is we would move it up over to, roughly to where the shell casing would come out of the actual gun. And because we're going to make this slide move back, I'm going to put it like roughly like around here. So when the slide moves back, it should pop out of that point. And we're going to rotate it until the blue arrow is facing sort of outward, away. It could be at an angle like this, or it could just be perfectly straight. I think I'll leave it at an angle because I kind of want it to sort of like fly out towards the side. So that's fine. Stock. This is obviously where the stock of the weapon is going to go. So in our case, we would put it like kind of back here. And center it to like the middle back of the gun. And I do believe it is the blue arrow here again. So we would rotate this until that blue arrow is facing towards whoever is holding the gun. Make sure it's not at an angle. Make sure it's perfectly straight. And there you go. If you were to put a stock on that in the game, that's where it would then appear. And it should be facing the right way. Rail. So this is where sights would go. So you would, in our case, we'd probably put it like right up here. It might be the green arrow that decides this. It might not be. I think it is the blue arrow though. So we're going to rotate that until it is perfectly straight with the blue arrow facing up. I think that's correct. I could be wrong. I haven't messed with attachments too much, but I think that's how that works. I know, amazing tutorial. I think. So, for the last thing, the slide. So, slides are a little funky. It's a little more complicated, and that's why we made this empty game object. We are going to name this empty game object slide underscore house. It does not need to be called that. I just name it that because it's easy for me to remember and identify what this is for. Then what we're going to do is we're going to specify the slide. So in our case, the slide is, it's up here. We're going to put it like around in the middle. And then we are going to rotate it. I believe in our case here, it's actually the green arrow that is deciding which way the slide is going. So that green arrow needs to be facing back towards who's shooting the gun, because in a real life gun, With a handgun like this, the slide would move backwards with each trigger pull in order to eject and then immediately load a new round. But you're not here for a gun lesson, you're here for a modding lesson. So now what we're going to do is we are going to go into our tutorial pistol, and we are going to locate all of the parts of the gun that are of the slide, and that includes all of the sights. So let's kind of locate those. I don't think we need to do the hammer of the gun. So there's the main sight. So there's the slide. We didn't mean to select all of those. So that's the slide and one part of the sight. We don't need that part. Don't need that part. Bear with me here. Okay, we got that part of the slide and then that part of the slide. So now that we have all of these selected, we are going to, well, first, we should have done this first. We should have unpacked the prefab. So you should have right-clicked on your pistol here and unpacked the prefab. So then you could grab these models as you needed. Should have done that first, but I'm a little bit stupid. You're going to have to bear with me. But let's just go ahead and do exactly what we just did. Don't need that selected. Where is that side at? Alright, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move these out of there just so we have them all. And now what we're going to do is we are going to put that inside the game object that says slide. I know, it's a little funky, but so those are now inside this game object just named slide. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grab slide and then place it inside of slide house. And then we will then place slide into breach object. And if I did it correctly, this slide should now move back in this manner when this weapon is fired in game. Alright, with everything positioned correctly, we are now ready to export. So we're going to click on our tutorial pistol down here in prefabs. So in my case, I'm just going to create a new folder called prefabs. I don't entirely know why that's gone, but we're going to pop that. Okay, I don't know why my tutorial, why my prefabs folder disappeared, but I created a new one. So in your prefabs folder where that weapon is, I suppose in our case this is just a variant, or we could just delete it and then pop it back in and now it's an original prefab. We are going to name it, so it's not immediately going to let me type, asset bundle, new. We're just going to call it tutorial pistol. Now, the thing about asset bundles is that you can have multiple of any asset in an asset bundle. So you can have 20 different weapons, and they're all in the same asset bundle, and you can put that into the game, and it'll be fine. But, so now what we're going to do is, now that this is in an asset bundle, we are going to click on where it says Madness up here, asset bundle, build. It should only take a second. Then it should automatically open up a folder on our computer called MadOBJs. Very good. And as you can see here, we have tutorial pistol .mobj. We are going to want to copy that and then go into Jibbing Tree, Madness Project Nexus, mods, and now this is where we're going to create our mod folder. So we are going to right click, new, we're going to call this mod tutorial pistol. So you can make a new folder here and call it asset bundle. You don't have to do this, I just like it to keep things tidy. So now I know where my asset bundle is. So now we're going to create a new folder. We're just going to call it tutorial pistol. This is where we're going to put the MAD card for our pistol, but now we need an info. So let's go ahead and just grab one from one of my other mods. This is what it looks like. It's an extremely basic piece of code, and if you are using the program Mad Card Maker, whenever you create like a new mod, it'll automatically make one of these info.txt files for you. Excuse me. So when you have info.txt, you fill it in. Name, tutorial, pistol, description, tutorial. And here you have the author name. You can put multiple people here. Just note, if you're putting multiple people, there's me, and then comma, blah, blah, boom, then you would be done. But in my case, I'm just going to leave it as the Pumpkin Eater. Tags, tutorial, and then weapon. You can add as many of these tags as you need. You would just put a comma here, enter space, 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 blah, blah, and then you would have your new tag. But in my case, I don't need that, so we're just going to leave things as they were. So that is our info. So that just tells the game that there's a mod here that can be loaded. So now that our info is done, we need a mad card for our pistol. So let's go and grab one. We'll just go ahead and use the 9mm pistol and the ammo I made for it, because I actually want to showcase that. So this mad card, we're just going to rename it to tutorial pistol, and then we're going to open it up, and you're going to see a lot of stuff like this. I'll kind of walk you through it. File name. This is the internal file name of this weapon. In our case, it needs to be r_tutorial pistol, because that's what we named it in Unity. OBJ ref, or object ref. This is very important. This is going to decide what the weapon looks like. Make sure you have it set to the same thing as your file name. In this case, the reason it's r_tutorial pistol, because that's what we named it in Unity. So that's going to tell the game this is the model that needs to be used. The name, tutorial pistol, name short, T-pistol. Description, let's put in a basic description here. If Notepad would stop being a jerk. Description, tutorial. Size, this is going to decide the size of the weapon. So if it's like size 5, it's a massive weapon. Only a select few characters will be able to one-hand it. If it's size 0, any character can one-hand it. Size 2, any character with like 5 or more strength can probably one-hand it. Weight, you're not going to use this for anything other than heavy weapons. Weight will physically slow down any characters who are holding this weapon. They will be physically slower. So unless you're adding like a minigun or a rocket launcher or portable anti-tank launcher, I don't know, something like that, you would give it like, I don't know, 15 weight or 5 weight, just so the character is like physically encumbered holding this weapon. Tier, that's going to decide when this appears in arena mode. So tier 0 unlocked by default, tier 1 like after pit stop. I believe tier 3 is after the foundry. So after you complete foundry and complete contract 2, you then immediately get it. And tier 8 is like after contract 3, so that's like in the end game. So that's kind of what the tiers do. Genre, I'd personally set this to nothing, just so enemies in arena mode will not spawn with these. If you set it to something like improvised or tools or cutting edge, and you have a tier on it, enemies in arena mode who pull from those genres might end up spawning with these weapons. Maybe you want that, maybe you don't, but in my case I set it to nothing because I do not want this to have any enemies spawning with it. Store, quartermaster. This just means it's being sold by the quartermaster. You could also set this to the black market, or I believe being sold by Dr. Skinner, although he only sells armors, so it might not be a great idea to put a pistol in there. Category, pistol. This is what category it's going to appear in both the playground and in arena mode. If I set it to rifle, it'll appear under rifle. If I set it to revolver, it would appear under revolver. You get the idea. Traits, I've given this no tinkerer, which means that you will not be able to put any attachments on it. Even tinkerer characters will not be able to tinker with this gun. Just because I like being mean to the tinkerer mains. I'm kidding. It's just here to showcase what traits do. Melee damage, if this is the damage it's going to do if you hit somebody with it. So if it gets thrown or if you physically hit somebody with it, that's how much damage it's going to do. Type, blunt, could be slashing, could be fire, could be acid, could be dissonance. Just set it to whatever you want it to do. Melee piercing, this is how much armor it's going to pierce. So if I set it to 5, it'll pierce 5 points of enemy armor. So if the enemy has 10 points of armor, then they're taking like a 50%, like 50% of their armor is basically useless if this has 5 piercing. Accuracy, this is how good the gun is at shooting in a straight line. So at 65, there's a 65% chance with every shot that it'll be an accurate shot. And then the rest of it is going to be an inaccurate shot. So if I set it to like 15, it's going to have garbage accuracy. If I set it to 100, it's going to have perfect accuracy. Armor piercing. This is how much damage the bullet is going to do to armor. So again, it's the same principle as melee piercing. If I set it to 5 and the enemy has 10 armor, 5 of that armor is now useless. It's going to get completely ignored, and they'll take full damage for like 5 points of their armor. And if they only have 5 armor and I have 5, and if a gun has 5 piercing, then they're taking full damage. Damage, this is the amount of damage the gun itself does. So you can set this to anything. You could set it to 999. You could set it to 2. You could set it to 1. You could set it to 5. Just whatever you want it to be. Loudness, I honestly don't think this stat does anything. This is how loud the gun is, but it doesn't actually affect the volume of the shot in the game. That's done through like a completely different thing I'll make a tutorial on later. But in this case, I think loudness might affect the distance of which enemies can hear the gun. So if it's at 100, they can hear it from across the map. If it's at like 5, they can barely hear it if it's like 3 feet away from them. I think that's how it works. I don't really bother myself with this stat. Range. So if you have a character with the sweet spot skill, this is where the sweet spot will appear. 1, literally right in front of you. 10, super far away. You can kind of gauge like where a sweet spot should be for a certain weapon. So in our case for the pistol, I think 4 is perfectly fine. Recoil. This game handles recoil in an interesting way, and I'll show you. So if I were to give this 100 recoil, your first thought might be, oh, the weapon's going to have a ton of recoil, and I'll barely be able to shoot with it because every shot is going to have 100 recoil on it. That is not the case. If I give this 100 recoil, it will have no recoil. It will have 100% resistance against recoil. So if you want a weapon to have like a lot of recoil, you would give it like 5 recoil or 15. In my case, I gave it 75 because this is meant to be like a 9mm pistol, so I feel like the recoil is not too bad. Ammo. This is how much ammo the gun has. So 18, 19, 25, 32. Set it to whatever you want. Just know that the more ammo a gun has, the more it's going to cost in arena mode. Ammo type. So I've made a unique ammo here, but if you're using vanilla ammo, you would just put 45 ACP or 9mm or 50 AE in here. And that's pretty much it. I will show you what my custom ammo looks like so you can kind of get an idea of what an ammo is. Burst fire. So if I were to set this to 3, the weapon would fire 3 shots with every trigger pull. With 0, it's only going to fire 1. If I set it to 1, it's also still only going to fire 1. So burst fire can only be ever like 2 to 999. You could absolutely set it to where the gun just empties the magazine the moment you pull the trigger. Sound path. So this is the sound the gun is going to make when you pull the trigger and the gun fires. I have a custom one. Half-Life 2 pistol shot, and in another tutorial I'll show you how I got that sound in the game. Rate of fire. This is how fast the gun is going to shoot. If you set it to like 60, you're going to be able to pull the trigger about once per second. If you set it to 600, you can spam the crap out of this thing and just keep on shooting. Generally, you can just play around with this stat and just find a rate of fire that you personally like, or whatever you want for your weapon. Recovery, this is how good the weapon is at recovering from recoil. So 80 is pretty good. That means after only like half a second, the sort of recoil that gets built up will disappear. If you want it to have like garbage recovery, give it like 10 recovery, it'll take a long time for that recoil to go away because the recovery would be so low. Reliability, reload, and stability, I'm pretty sure these stats do not do anything. I have never given them to any of my guns and they all work fine. So if these do something, please let me know and I will make an addendum. But as far as I know, these stats don't do anything. Am automatic. If this is set to true, the weapon will be fully automatic. So you can hold down the trigger and it'll keep firing. If it's not, then it's semi-automatic. Or burst fire if you set it to have a burst fire stat. And breach. This means that when the gun is reloaded, it'll be like a breach weapon. So all of the spent shell casings will pop out, and then the character will load them back in one by one. Infinite reloads. This just means the weapon has infinite reloads. It's pretty self-explanatory. True or false, leave it as is. Reload rule. This will decide... This is mostly for like Magiturge guns. I do believe some of the reload rules are like bloodlusted enemies, or you get dizzied, or you get thrown back. For most guns, you're just going to leave it as default though, which means nothing happens except the gun gets reloaded. So we've got our MAD card here. So we're going to Control S and we're going to save it. So now we're going to look at our ammo. File name, same as the gun, just name it, whatever. Root 9mm. I wanted this to act the same as a 9mm, except I've changed the stats around. But generally speaking, this will use the world model for the 9mm, and it will use the same shell casing, although you can absolutely just set that, both of those things, right here under bullet and casing. Name, short, name. These don't really matter that much. Just name them whatever. So name short, again, it's gonna be the same. Description also doesn't really matter what you put here. You can put a nice long-winded description, or you can be lazy like me and just put pew. Size, anything above 1 will immediately go through enemy tack bars. If you want a projectile that ignores tack bars, you would set the size to like 1. Weight, don't believe it does anything. Tier also doesn't do anything in this context, I think. Genre doesn't matter here, I think. Store also doesn't matter. Category, I think this is purely aesthetic. I don't think this actually does anything. Scale, this is like how physically large the bullet is in the game world. So if I set this to 10, it's going to be a massive bullet, but it's not going to do any more damage. It's just going to be big. Bullet, I set it to 9mm because that's the bullet I want it to use. But if you made a custom bullet in Unity, which I'll make another tutorial on how to do that, this is where you would put that. Casing, 9mm. Accuracy. So you can give ammo all the same stats that you can give a gun. I do not recommend that you do this unless you just prefer that the damage come from the bullet. Or come from the ammo that you're using. Let's see here. Shots. So if I set this to 5, it's going to shoot 5 bullets at once. And that's going to be multiplied by the amount of damage the gun is doing. So if I have 5 bullets and the weapon is doing 1 damage, then the gun is doing 5 damage because it's shooting 5 bullets. If it's 2, it's 5 times 2. It's doing 10 damage. You get the idea. Spread, I believe this dictates the spread of the individual bullets as they fly through the air. So if you're doing a shotgun, you might want to play with this. I haven't really touched it though. Shot speed, this is how fast the bullet is going to fly in the game world. So if I set this to like 20, it's going to be absurdly slow. 190 is generally kind of normal though. Heat seek, this is if the bullet is going to gravitate towards enemies. It's gonna, if you've played the game and you know like Nexus bolts, those gravitate towards enemies. This is the stat that decides that. I believe 1 is the heat seek that Nexus bolts use, and the more heat seek you add, the more they'll kind of like home in on their target. AoE range, I don't really know what this does. I might have to look back into that. Damage type, ballistic is what you're going to want to use for anything that you want to act like a normal bullet. If you give it like burn or dissonance, then it'll do those damage types in the game. DOT, so you can add like fire or acid or doom or dizzy, I think here. Basically, this will activate upon the bullet hitting the enemy. Explosion, you can put an explosion here, and then that just means that this bullet will explode when it hits the target. Impact sound, this is the sound it plays when it impacts a non-living target, I believe. So if it hits a wall, this is just a default game sound, and then no SFX on hit. If you set that to true, the weapon will not make any sounds when it hits something. But we're not really gonna change that. We're just gonna not even save it. We're just gonna go into the game. So now we are ready to finally look at our weapon in the game. So let's get up and game here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the bottom left and we're going to click on this gear icon, and we will find that tutorial pistol is here, and we're going to hit enable, apply. Now we're going to go into the playground. And let's see if I did everything correctly. So we're going to walk over here to the weapon spawner. Pistol. Can't wait. Tutorial pistol. Mine. Oh hey, I actually got the scaling moderately correct. And hey, the slide works correctly. I'm happy about that. So everything about this weapon is working correctly. And it was that much effort to get one little gun into the game. I know it's kind of a lot, but it's very worth it and it's very fulfilling, and I have ported in dozens of weapons at this point. So that's just about it for this tutorial. I'll actually go and show you the original 9mm pistol. So obviously the scaling's a little different. I'm surprised I got it that close, if I'm being honest. But this is the Half-Life 9mm pistol, which I think is awesome. And yeah, I think that about does it for this tutorial. As you can see, the weapon that I showed you how to make is working. Hopefully this will let you know how to add a custom weapon into your game. In another tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to add a custom projectile, and I'll actually give you a sneak peek on what that looks like. If we go into rifle here and we get the pulse rifle, I'll actually show you that I made a custom projectile for this. And I'll show you how to make one of those in Unity and put it in the game. And I will also make a tutorial showing you how to put custom audio in the game so you can get guns like me who use sounds from other games or sounds that you have or sounds that you made. I will also give you a tutorial on how that works for melee weapons. So stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below and I will answer anything that's within my ability to answer. And you guys have an awesome day. I hope this tutorial was helpful. Peace out.